I just got done watching She-Hulk episodes 1 through 4. The embargo is now up. It's finally in. I can talk about it in non-spoilers, of course, because I don't want to spoil anything for you guys. I know a lot of Marvel stuff. People want to go in not knowing anything. They want to enjoy themselves. So this is going to be a very vague review. I will have spoiler reviews at midnight every single week that this show releases on those Thursday nights. Technically Wednesday night going into Thursday. So if you are interested in those, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button because we will be talking full spoilers, specifically episode 3. I'm very curious to hear what people have their thoughts on after the end credit scene of that. It's nothing majorly huge that's game-changing to the MCU. It's just really baffling of a choice, but it fits to the tone of this show, which is what we're going to talk about. As well as many of you guys have been asking me about doing watch-alongs for MCU shows, I will be doing those on my Patreon, starting with She-Hulk episode 5, since that will be the first episode that they are not giving to the press. So just as a heads up for that. Anyways, let's dive into She-Hulk. My first initial impressions of this I released on Monday night, and I like the show. I don't love it. I don't even hate the show. This show has a very unique sense of genre to it. This is a half an hour legal comedy that doesn't really lead and bleed into any of the dramatic avenues that certain MCU shows have. It's very funny, and this is a compliment of what I'm about to say to it. This feels like a show that would air on ABC or NBC, but with a way higher budget. Because, of course, of how She-Hulk looks, as well as all the other characters that happen to pop in here. And that's the one thing that I think about this show, is that it's very meta. It's very fun. And that's my biggest takeaway, is that I have fun with this show. And one of the biggest elements that they are doing very well is making Tatiana Maslany's She-Hulk, Jennifer Walters, front and center. In fact, I would argue that this show does not really even have a plot to it. This is more of a character study broken into 30-minute increments throughout the comedy. And there are elements that I wish they would dive a little bit deeper with her character and certain relationships within her family members, particularly Bruce Banner. But even then, Tatiana is giving this character humanity. Humanity that is very much needed for a character like this, for us to really come to love her. And I love how they are introducing this character, specifically as well as if you've seen the trailers, she does break the fourth wall. She-Hulk did this in the comics. She was doing this way long before Deadpool was. So no, she is not just copying Deadpool, but in the way that she is using this, and the way that the writers are using the fourth breaking wall, is to tackle certain things that us as viewers have asked each other, but as well as addressing certain things in a fun way that makes sense, and things that we as viewers have always talked about or joked around. And the fourth wall breaking is an easy way to bring us into this world of the MCU, a different platform for it, and also make us love Jennifer Walters, make us care about Jennifer Walters. In fact, they even make fun of the name She-Hulk at one point. How much she hates that name, how much it's a derivative, because it makes sense. That's what we all say. I love that. And I love Tatiana Maslany once again in this role. She is She-Hulk. She embodies this character. She brings her to life. She's excellent. Mark Ruffalo, from what we've gotten to see, he's awesome. And, you know, I have not been that high on the Smart Hulk character, but at this point in time, I've kind of just given in to this is the Hulk that the MCU is deciding to use. And I think this is the best use of Smart Hulk yet, particularly in the way that they kind of balance out both of their relationships. And I'll talk about my issues in just one second, but I wanted to give a shout out to that, as well as Ginger Gonzaga, who plays Nikki Ramos, her best friend, her paralegal. She's awesome. And she is the best friend that you would want in here. Now, there are a couple other characters, of course, that you've seen from the trailers, like Abomination. Wong, I don't want to dive in too much to those because I haven't seen enough of them. And from what I have seen of them, they kind of do dive into spoiler territory, so I am going to stay away from that. But they are a lot of fun to see. I just know that there are going to be a lot of fans who are hoping that this gets us back to the Hulk and Abomination that we got from The Incredible Hulk and the first Avengers film. And I'll flat out tell you right now, that is not what this show is. Now, maybe later down the road, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, those episodes, maybe those reveal something that is just like that. But from what I have seen, it is completely not like that. This is, again, more of a comedy. And I like that because each and every one of the jokes for me actually landed. Some will be a little bit cringy for people, some will not be, but very self-aware of what it is. And they make fun of elements like this. Like, there is a gag in the first She-Hulk episode that happens very early on and then ties into the end credit scene. And speaking of end credit scenes, there is one in each and every episode. Now, again, they are not, world-changing, earth-shattering. Maybe eventually they will be, but they're always fun gags that kind of tied into something else that had happened earlier on in the episode. And that's how I'm enjoying this show, is that I'm watching it, I'm laughing, and I'm liking it. I'm not loving it, though. And the reason I am liking it is just because I'm having a blast, and I think Tatiana is awesome as the character. This is, very different. And I know we've been saying that about a lot of Phase 4, but this feels very different in tone. It is not like Miss Marvel, where Miss Marvel was straight up a coming-of-age story, or even Moon Knight. And I would even look at both of those and be like, yeah, I could see how somehow they tie into the same world. And She-Hulk, I can clearly see that, but it's so different. And I'm loving that Kevin Feige let them go in this direction. And the last thing I do want to mention is, of course, the visual effects, something that I've been kind of staying away from. Now, obviously, I got screeners for this. I got the first 4 episodes, so I can't... Sometimes the screeners come with, CGI that is not done. Moon Knight was a big element of that. In fact, episode 4 of Moon Knight that they sent us early, literally none of the visual effects were done. Or at least half of them weren't. So it was hard to review that episode a little bit early. I actually had to rewatch it and then see, okay, they updated it. It looks a little bit better. So She-Hulk, the first 2 episodes, she looks pretty good. Some of the hair, some of the lip stuff kind of looks a little bit off. But then once I got into episode 2, I was like, okay, I'm a little bit more into this. I kind of get it. It's not as bothering me as much. Then episode 3 and then episode 4, sometimes it looks okay and sometimes it looks great. It really just depends in the moment. And I understand, this is a smaller budget show than typically a movie. I don't know what the budget was for this, but sometimes it looks good, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, that's how it is. It's going to be different for every single person who watches this show. Some people are going to think it's god-awful each time. Some people are going to be like, oh, that's pretty solid. And some people will be like, it doesn't bug me, but it could be better. And some people won't be able to watch this show because of the CGI. But I imagine, eventually She-Hulk will probably show up in an Avengers movie, and the CGI will be 1,000 times better for that, which is all we can hope for, right? So you're going to go into the show expecting a couple things. But let's talk about my issues with the show, which, again, I mentioned, I like that they're using this show as a vehicle for She-Hulk. And I like that this character study of showing what happens when a character's whole life, she's built up to this point to become this top-tier lawyer, ends up becoming the She-Hulk. How does that ruin her life? And I like that. I like the character study moments of that. I like the humor. But there really is not a sense of story direction yet. It feels, again, like a sitcom. And that's fine, but there's no overarching length or story kind of going behind the scenes. Maybe a couple things here and there, but nothing too grandiose yet. And I think some people are not going to like that. As well as some of the humor is a little bit cringy. And like I mentioned, episode 3, there are 2 court trials going on. In fact, the best way to explain this show is that every episode, besides the first one is very much the origin of She-Hulk, but every episode after that is very much, this is a court proceeding, this is a court trial. And it shows how she's defending them, what she's doing, all sorts of things like that. Episode 3 splits it down the middle and focuses on another court trial that really doesn't revolve around her at all. And then another one that's kind of going, and then of course hers that's going on. The one that's not involving her, I thought was absolutely stupid. It was funny, but it was really dumb. And then the end credit scene ties into that. And again, in context, the end credit scene is really funny, but also really cringy, and that is not going to work for everyone. And I feel like that is where I'm kind of looking at the show, is that I enjoy it, and I think there's a lot of great things. And shout out to the writers of this, from the female perspective. There are certain things mentioned in here that my fiance is going to be able to watch and absolutely laugh or lose her shit or relate to heavily. And I think that's one thing that I really dig about that. And again, not every person's going to relate, but there's certain things in there that I really like how they wrote this. And I think, again, when it just comes down to my issues, it's just, I didn't really have many expectations for the show anyways. I didn't really like any of the trailers. I'm really looking forward to what they do with Daredevil. That's one thing I'm curious to see how they bring this in. Maybe we'll get some word, and if this actually is the same Charlie Cox as Daredevil from the Netflix series, or just some certain things they take from it. But I just think some of the humor is a little bit too cringy. There really is not enough story here. And my last issue is I wish the episodes were longer. I know they're only an hour and a half, but particularly the first episode should have been at least 45 minutes. And I say that because they jump right into saying, oh, Bruce Banner, this is her cousin, and things like that. And for me, I did not believe that they were family. It just didn't feel like family until maybe midway through the episode, where I'm like, okay, I'm starting to kind of get into their chemistry. And they have good chemistry, but it's more of like a friendship thing than a family thing. And I understand they're cousins, and some cousins aren't that close, but it just feels weird that they're going on a road trip. But then this, it's hard to talk about without getting into spoilers, but I wish they would have dove into that relationship a little bit more before actually giving her the powers. I actually wouldn't have minded the first episode was seeing her from being just a lawyer and then going on this road trip, becoming She-Hulk, and then diving into this. I actually kind of wish they would have dove into that a little bit more and given us depth on that. But besides that, I'm having fun watching the show. Curious to hear your guys' thoughts. Again, this is my non-spoiler review. All my spoiler reviews will be dropping at midnight when those episodes are released. You know how I do it. I like to be right there with you guys talking She-Hulk as well. Guys, if you are new here, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you do not miss out on content like that. Comment down below your guys' thoughts. Are you excited for the show? Does this review get you any more excited? Or are you a little bit more worried now? Let's talk about it. And of course, guys, until next time, stay classy.